Well, hey, everybody. And I have today, for another courageous conversation, someone who's written about the journey he took with his wife, and it's David Anderson. So, David, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get to the other person on here, who's Jodi Schultz. But let's do David first. So, David, what do you got for us?
Well, let's see. I guess I'm not all that interesting, but I had an interesting ride. When my wife was diagnosed, when Joyce was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and mixed Alzheimer's dementia and the pseudobulbar effect and all those things that we had to figure out what they meant, MCI. So I Googled that and found, oh yeah, cognitive impairment, and started buying books and all those things so that I could learn as much as I could. So
David, I want to pause you for a second. So when you got the diagnosis, you didn't get the roadmap that from the doctor about this is what this means, this is what it probably, and now we're starting to see symptoms, and this is what that means, this is what the pseudobulbar things would be. That's not what you got, huh?
Not really. It was there. It was all pretty skimpy, and the diagnosis isn't very scientific. It's mostly observation.
Yeah. So how long did it take from the time that when you're thinking about it, you saw first signals and signs something was going on here with Joyce until like the evaluation and it was like, yeah, here's what we think, at least Alzheimer's and some other stuff probably. How long did that take?
I think it was in late 2018 when we were first getting suspicious, but we didn't talk about it until 2019 that we wondered enough to say, have you seen anything too? And then it was at Joyce's wellness check in August that I called her care team, her hospital team, and talked with her doctor's nurse about it so that they addressed the subject there. And then that was in August. And then in November, we talked to the neurologist. So it was that long before we had anything concrete.
Wow. So when you look back, what were some of the first things that you realized or Joyce realized were happening?
Well, she started fixating on how many twigs were down in the yard. I can't believe there's so many twigs. I can't believe almost anything that she would say, and talked about the weather. I can't believe it's so dark tonight.
You started to hear this, I can't believe, like, right. This is so odd. And her observations, which wouldn't have been before, it was like, well, same number of twigs that are usually down. I mean,
right, yeah.
It's like the weather is about like it usually is.
Sure.
But in her mind, it felt weird. It felt odd, and she felt the need to comment on it. So It was really hitting her as though this information doesn't feel right to me.
I haven't looked at it through these eyes before.
Yeah.
Probably,
yeah.
Sort of
thing. Yeah. So she was really viewing the world around her and finding it to be interesting, unexpected. And were there any motor symptoms like movement patterns or anything that you started picking up on, or nothing there?
Not early. And her whole process was 4 years at the most. And
once it started going, it was like a freight train.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have to say that's probably the best way for this disease to progress. It's overwhelming at the time, but you also know short is probably good.
I mean, I do have people who say pseudobulbar palsy is like so fast, and it's like, wow, you never get your feet on the ground. It feels like you're always running, trying to catch up with it. But at the same time, you wouldn't ask your person to linger longer in any of those moments. Good. Yeah. So Jodi, tell us about your role in this.
Well, I am one of Joyce and Dave's 5 children, the one in the middle. So while you were asking him about the diagnosis and all of the time, I know that my siblings and I, were kind of struggling with how we tell the people close to us what's happening, because we didn't really have words. And we would say to our dad, but is there an actual diagnosis of anything? Because sometimes it's just so much easier if we can tell people a word.
Yeah, what's going on? And MCI means so little. I mean, it's
Right, yeah,
well,
pretty
how's that
generic,
different than what everybody gets? I mean,
right,
yeah, that's slow sort of thinking and a little bit of impairment, but nothing awful, but you can't remember the word or you can't find your
right.
way but nothing awful. And this was getting to where it was like, this is getting in the awful category. This is not like just some little rinky dink thing. This is looking serious here.
Yeah. So I guess we just all, our dad would update us after doctor's appointments, and we would kind of try to understand what we could. And
I'd come home with a whole list of words and I would talk to Dr. Google.
It's just like, okay, wait a minute, I've got some new ones here. Yeah. So you were taking down notes
Mhm.
of the words that they would use, but nobody ever paused and said, so I want to go over for you and for Joyce what this is looking like and see if I'm right. See if this feels about right for what you're experiencing. That was not a pattern.
Not really.
Not
You know,
really.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, the book that you wrote after Joyce finished her journey.
Right.
And what was the name of this book what did you decide to call it?
Well, You're Perfect, Finding Joy in what? I wish I had one.
sharing love.
Isn't it funny when you go to it? Yeah.
I was going to bring one. Finding Joy and Sharing Love.
And
That
sharing
was the
love.
subtitle.
Well,
And-
it was Valentine's Day recently, Dave. So we really need to work on that sharing love part, because that seemed to be the part you were having trouble with there. Finding joy you had down. Yeah.
But the sharing love, our family support was incredible. You know, all of the kids, all of the grandkids. We have 10 grandkids, and the oldest ones are going to be 30 years old this year.
Wow. Ouch.
But everybody was just helping and supporting one another. So
yeah. So how old was Joyce when this all started? Because usually that's a younger onset.
about 70, 69, possibly. See, who knows when it really started, you know, but I think we noticed things when she was 70.
Okay, around 70.
Mhm.
So when you talk about you're perfect, tell me about those words that you chose.
Well, let's see. We wanted something catchy and we didn't think we should say measles. How did we come up? I had something different in mind, and then I emailed back and forth with Jodi. How about this? How about this? And she had said something about the word perfect. And then I took that. And I mean, it was just sort of building on what the other one said. Then it came up and I said, wow, I'm sure glad we chose that instead of what I was thinking before.
So you found out that teamwork really is teamwork, and it really is essential.
And the photo on the cover is one that Jodi took of the Legacy Gardens, where we used to walk frequently. We would stop there and walk and take pictures. And some of her, maybe it's illegal. If it's illegal, none of her ashes are there. But if it's not legal, if it's not illegal, there might be some.
There are some. Well, there are some of my father's ashes in the rhododendron that people may not realize. So, but we won't tell them about that. It's just, it was just happened. I don't know how. And then some of my mother's are in a lake. So don't tell anybody.
I won't. And if they do, I'll tell them not to tell anybody.
That's right. Tell them not to tell anybody.
All right.
So the other part about You're Perfect is that was one of the mantras that my mom repeated the last, I don't know, couple years. It started out that she and my dad always loved each other very much, but she doesn't remember that there were sometimes moments where she was frustrated with him. But all of a sudden he became perfect, and she started telling him all the time that he was perfect, and she started telling all of us that he was perfect, and then it's expanded out, and all of a sudden, and so she would see him and she would say, "You're perfect. You are. I think you're perfect."
That's right. Yeah.
And then she would expand that to the rest of us when we would come to visit. "You're perfect. I think you're perfect. You are." And she would say, along with the talking about my dad being perfect, she would say, "Dad just takes such good care of me. He's perfect. I think he's perfect." And so it became something, eventually all of us who didn't have these diagnoses realized, well, we should be telling her she's perfect too. So,
that was my very next question, but you already
yeah.
answered. So you came to the realization that she needed to hear it as much as it was great to hear it. She also needed to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
That whatever's going on, you're still perfect. You're absolutely perfect as you are, where you are, as we are. Yeah. And there were hard times doing that, I'm sure, because there's some hard moments where you hit some hard walls and you have to sort of go, you know what? You're perfect. Situation sucks, but you're perfect.
There you go. That's true. That's true. But you know, she was happy all the time, and that was part of the
Wow.
pseudobulbar or what, however you call that.
Should
Yeah.
have mm-hmm.
She was happy all the time, and her doctor said it doesn't usually happen this way, so count your blessings, and we did. You know, she'd ask
Yeah.
everybody if they wanted to polka with her, and then she'd sing the beer barrel polka while she danced with them, and out in public, you know, in the furniture store or wherever we were, she'd find somebody to do a polka with her.
I love it. A woman after my heart. I mean, were you all, now where are you from originally?
Oh, well, we've been in Minnesota all of our entire lives.
Okay, I was going to say Wisconsin, Minnesota, or Pennsylvania. Those are the places where everybody polkas.
There you got it.
Yes, I learned in second grade for sure. So you used music, you used song, she used music and song. Joy, you used a lot of joy, and you found that. Did she ever have, often with pseudobulbar, there's also the other side of crying or angry. Did she ever have those episodes?
Never.
Wow. That is really, I will
did.
say that's unusual. Your doctor was right about that one.
I think our goal was that she would feel loved, not just be loved, but that she would feel loved and that she would be safe and feel safe. So that was the big goals, and I think we accomplished that pretty well through it.
So talk to me a little bit about what got you started on the book. How did you all decide to do the book? Did it start with pictures? Did it start with words? Did it start with feelings? How did you get, and how long after Joyce's passing did you start it?
Not all that long. I think that we kind of knew at some level of consciousness that we were going to do something like this. I think just because that's kind of how I organize my thoughts, and that's kind of how I express myself. And if I don't see it in writing, I probably don't even know what I think. But if I see it in writing, I say, oh, that's what I think. Oh, it makes good sense. And so I kept kind of a journal timeline just in a yellow notebook, you know, and I didn't write in it every day, but every time that we saw big changes, and every time we got comments from either her doctor or friends or anybody who noticed changes, and we documented those changes. But the best thing for documenting, I've discovered, is your Google photos, because they all are dated.
Yep,
And
they
I
pop
have
back
about
up.
1 million of them. So I can go back and look at them and tell exactly when things were happening.
So when you look at those photos, how many of them are of places, of people, of things in the world around you, or of the emotion that y'all had? What'd you get? What do you have the most of?
Jodi, why don't you take that one?
Looking at the pictures, well,
Who took most of them? Let me ask.
Back up to the writing part of it is that I think, like my dad, I sometimes have such big feelings all wrapped up inside me, and to sort of take that big ball out and put it on a page helps me understand and helps me name the things that I'm feeling and maybe some of the reasons why. So I knew when I went through this big life event that at some point I was going to have to, for my own sanity, sit down and write it down. And for me, unfortunately, I had a silly playground accident in the very beginning of March after she died. And so like 6 weeks out, maybe, or no, she died January 12th and then it was March 4th. So I sprained both of my ankles and really couldn't do much else. And that's when I sat and had my crying and writing and crying and writing. That's when I pounded all that out. So then Dad had been sort of doing incrementally and journaling, and then he took mine and asked if he could put it with his. But as far as the pictures, I think we were so lucky because just like my dad said, my mom was happy all the time. You've never heard so many times in your life, I'm so glad you're here. So good to see you. So glad you're here. Just over and over. And you're perfect. And where else can you go for all that? But I know that wasn't because we did something right or anybody else did something wrong. It's just that we got really lucky with her just being happy like that. So we did take lots of pictures. She did do funny things and then she would laugh. So we would laugh too. So I feel like there are a lot of pictures where there is genuine joy.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
then underlying pain.
We've documented our joys and we've documented our sadness through pictures, and I'm so glad that we have those. But as far as some of the writing that I did after her death, like immediately after the next few days or weeks, I just wanted to get my feelings out, and I wanted other people to understand them. And sometimes if you do them in a poetic form, I don't know, you can say things with a few words in the imagery of a poem. So that's how a lot of my writing was. I wanted to share how deep, how sad I am. And so that was how I did it. And I wanted this to be a tribute to Joyce, and it is.
And that's clear. I mean, this is a tribute to Joyce and how she traveled through this whole really hard journey. But it's also a tribute to all of you for being in that space of being able to find the perfect, the absolute perfect in what was, which many people would view as impossible. And yet she did. I mean, she was, you couldn't ask for a better companion to make this journey with if you have to make it. I mean, she's the one you want to travel with because no matter what happens, she's gonna say, it's just perfect. You're perfect. Yeah. And find the pleasure in it. I mean, oof. Wow.
By Thanksgiving of 2022, and she was declining rapidly, but she did have some ups and downs. And being the extrovert that she was, every time people came, including her doctor, she would liven up and seems much better than she really was. But I had a little table talk at our Thanksgiving dinner table, and I asked our kids if they remembered the marriage vows. And so we all said, let's see, for better, for worse, richer, for poorer, sickness and health, until death. I said, no, see, I forgot the next one too. But when I looked it up, it's to love and to cherish is before till death do us part. And I said, that's all we have left.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So that's what we had. I printed that. I put it on the refrigerator. That was our motto for the next, she died probably 6 or 7 weeks later, but we just loved and cherished during that whole time. And that was it.
Yeah. So many people don't know much about pseudobulbar palsy and that progression pattern. It's almost always quick and fast and hard. And it robs people of the ability to control a lot of the mechanisms that allow you to eat, suck, swallow, breathe, and be effective in that. It also gives you these emotional bursts. And for your wife, they were joyful bursts, but for many people they aren't. Right. But it comes out of nowhere. You can't put a lid on it. You can't control it. And yet, in her circumstance, the emotion, at least, was one of these ones where there was absolute joy present when she would have that, and you could see it in her eyes. I mean, she really meant, "You're perfect. I mean, she wasn't just saying words that she couldn't find other words. She really believed those words,
She did.
kinds of things. What was the hardest part? And I'm sure you talk about this. So what was the hardest part for you, David? And then for Jodi, what was really hard for you? Being on the outside of living with it, but living with it every single day.
Well, anticipating, knowing the end result and wanting it to be as easy for her as it could be and not scary at all. That was in the last days, it was to help her not be afraid and to let her know things are okay and to let her know that we're here with you. And we have some pretty touching photos during that time of everybody was hugging her, laying beside her in bed, and you could see she was pretty close to her death, but she knew we were there and she wasn't afraid. And that was the process.
That's huge.
That was the goal.
Yeah, that's huge. Jodi, what about you, if you think about it?
I think the eventual sort of gradual role reversal was the hardest because, when I was a little 4-year-old, my mom was a superhero, and I just knew that she would know the answer to any question I had, and she would know how to keep me safe, and she would know how to help me do anything I needed to do. And as that started fading, because, even as an adult, there's still a little bit of that magic there.
For sure.
So yeah, when she started turning to me to help her with things that she had helped me with, and then started aging down, I have a special little person in my life who, at the time my mom was diagnosed, was, I don't know, there was a baby in our lives, and I just commented on what a strange feeling it was watching her learn things and grow and start gaining language and vocabulary and comprehension, and then having my mom going the other way. And I said at one point, there's going to be a crossover. And then when that happened, our little, I'll just call her granddaughter for lack of a better word, but she was maybe 2.5. And I said, it's happened. She understands the world a little more right now than my mom does, and she's adding more and more every day. So that was a hard thing to watch.
That was hard to watch. The good news on the little girl is that she had those different emotions. They weren't all that positive, wonderful. She's bound to have had that range of emotions. And your mom was really in some ways stuck in this one spot. But what a wonderful place if you have to get stuck, rather than rage or rather than fear or rather than feeling unloved or uncared for, to be in that space of being and caring and loving, regardless of abilities, is such a huge piece. So the name of the book, I'm going to have you say it out, the name of the book, and we're going to be putting in the chat. We will put in the chat how you can have access to it and how you can get it. And they'll be in the chat so you guys can get all the details in the chat. And if you have questions about what happened and how it happened, and you want to ask David more questions or Jodi more questions, I feel certain they'd be happy. If you put something in the chat, they will keep an eye and we will make sure they see it and they will respond, because this is they call an atypical rare dementia. And looking back, I'm almost positive it isn't actually an Alzheimer's. It's its very own animal, and it's its very own dementia. And it's really special in a really unspecial way, but it is what it is. So David, the name of the book, again, written by you and Jodi, is
You're Perfect, Finding Joy and Sharing Love.
Yeah. And up to now, Yeah, that says it all. It does. And up to now, it's a giveaway, but we'll let you know in the chat how you can access it and what it might cost to get it, just because, you know what, there are costs associated with producing it and getting it to people. And that's a reality.
Right.
And these folks are amazing human beings who want to have the legacy of Joyce's life and the joy that they all figured out on how to make it through this and how to learn through this and how to become new people through this. So here's the book, You're Perfect, Finding Joy and Sharing Love. And this story about Joyce is truly about the woman who was still Joyce to the very end of living this life. And what a pleasure to talk to both of you. And thank you for being willing and having the courage to being willing to write the book, tell the story, and share the story, because there are people out there who will benefit from this in so many ways. So thank you, David. Thank you, Jodi and Joyce.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You are welcome. Hi, I'm Teepa Snow, and you just found our YouTube channel and watched one of our videos. I'm the owner and founder of Positive Approach to Care. Thanks for watching. And if you liked, if you have a comment about, or you would, please share it with people you know. Oh, and if you haven't yet done it, consider subscribing. We'll let you know when the next new video comes out. And you might want to visit our website, www.teepasnow.com, where you'll find other resources as well. See you there.